This is the lecture for Ancient and Medieval History for Thursday, 13th of May, 2021. And we have just finished the last couple of minutes of the 13th Warrior, which we weren't able to see before class concluded on Tuesday. And yesterday we had the exam. I love that bit at the end. I had forgotten about not seeing the rest of the movie. So Peyton, thank you. And Ms. Daigle, thank you both for pointing out to me, because what do you think he meant at the end when he said, blessings be on pagan men for allowing me to become a man? What do you think he meant by that? Zoe?
Well, he sort of had to, during the time when he was the 13th warrior, or sort of had to adapt and fight and prove his place among the rest of the Northmen. And instead of sort of just being someone who was also had a pretty easy life according to like the prologue beginning stuff.
Indeed. There's nothing wrong with an easy life per se. However, the question is, are you a means or an end? This is a true question for all of us. Are each of you, an end unto ourselves, or are you a means to a greater end? And the truth is, a well-lived person with a well-lived life is both. You're important. You matter. You exist. You have minds and lives, hopes and dreams, sentience, awareness. You can make choices. Absolutely. But a human being that is satisfied just to be an end unto himself or herself is a person that doesn't spend their life in service to anything other than their own belly interests. A person who's useful to God, or useful to their beliefs, or useful to their family or their friends, is a person who takes what they've been given, their talents, their moments, their opportunities to speak and to do things, to choose, and does all of those things with the intent of serving the good, of serving a cause, of helping to save someone's life or make someone's life better. Many of you are in families where the adults work very hard jobs, very long hours, for very little pay. I've been in a family like that. And do you think your family members who are doing these jobs like going to work every day? They may not. They probably don't. If they're near the bottom. They do it for you. They do it because they love their family. I'm very, very blessed in that I have a job I love. I'm so fortunate because most days I go to work energized. Most people don't have that. At times in my life, I didn't. They are sacrificing their days and their hours, their sleep, and they're sacrificing it all for their families. They're serving a higher purpose. You will find things for you to serve. It may be your concept of God. It may be your country. It may be your friends. It may be family. It may be a cause. It may be that you serve a bunch of things at the same time. If you do that, you're not just an end. You are an end unto yourself that has chosen to be a means to a greater good. Whether that good is bringing enough home to keep your family under a roof with food in their mouths, or whether that is to serve God or to make the world a better place, to help your friends get through crisis, or whatever. Whatever the cause is, you might be sacrificing of your health, of your time, of your reputation, of your money, maybe of your health or life, When our founding fathers were going to fight their government, their king, they put everything on the line. And the way they phrased it is their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. All of that were on the line for freedom. You will have moments in your life where you'll get to choose. One of the earliest I found was to tell a friend an unpleasant truth. I had a friend, he liked me, we got along, but he was nasty to other people, especially girls. Did not treat them well. And I had to say something, and the friendship was lost. But I couldn't not say something. You will find that some of the hardest moments are with people that you love or that you care about, who you have to say things to they're not going to want to hear. And at that moment, you'll be making a decision that's going to tell what kind of person you are. And maybe you'll make the wrong decision. Hopefully you can come back from it. That's the lovely thing about living another day. You can make new decisions. Anyway, that to me is all of it. Was it just that he learned to fight in a battle? That was part of it. But he also learned to serve rather than to be served. Yeah. Tease me with your hand. I'm not really asking. Fine. Ibn Fadlan, went north, soft, and not very useful to anyone or anything. He comes back with courage and with an appreciation of how precious life is. And with that appreciation, he's going to do something. I don't know what. He may just be a very good man when he goes back, but he's going to do something worthwhile. He's not just going to seek pleasure and pleasure and pleasure, and that's all. Do you have any other thoughts on this notion of leading a well-lived life, of being useful? Yeah.
Well, like, if your job is something like this for a higher good, it's not just to bring food for your family. Like, my dad served in the military. Like, he brought home food for us, obviously, but he also was, like, helping North and South Korea, like, stay in their temporary peace as long as possible.
Indeed.
And, like, that meant that it didn't mean that our lives were bad. Like, we lived in South Korea, but it was a great experience for us, too. So, like, there were so many pluses to that. Like, some people might be like, well, your dad wasn't there all the time. And that's true. He would come home really late sometimes, or, like, he wouldn't be there for my birthday. But it was totally worth it when I think back on it.
It wasn't just worth it for you and your family.
Yeah.
He understood that if the North Koreans came across the border, you were going to be at risk.
Yeah.
That's scary stuff. Korea is one of the most dangerous places on earth, the Korean border where your dad served. And he wasn't just serving to keep the peace there. If war breaks out in Korea, there's a good chance it'll break out elsewhere. His service, at less money than he had needed, he could have gotten much more in the civilian war. He worked longer hours, he had less money, he had probably less respect from some people anyway in our society. But he did it for the sake of our freedom.
Yeah, we had to do, like, gas mask drills pretty often in case, like, they gassed us out or something like that.
Yeah.
But when we came back, like, my dad worked a normal job after that. But he still, like, he was a better person from serving in the military. And helped him, like, in his professional life because he's, like, a good leader. Unfortunately, he has this thing, like, he can be super nice, and yet some people can feel like he's mad at them and just start crying. But he learned that in the military.
Yeah, well, it's carrying yourself in a certain way. I have that. I was the youngest grade I ever taught was 5th grade. And I'd be lying if I said there weren't times when I was surprised that kids would just break into tears around me. And it was, I guess I was scary. I don't know. But, I used that. I did. But I tried to use it very carefully. And a man like your dad certainly would be the same. Whatever it is, whether you're serving in the military, whether it has anything to do with violence or not, the key is taking your life into your hands and intentionally doing something with it that isn't easy, that isn't fun, that isn't safe, that isn't immediately pleasurable or rewarding. And by doing that service, by risking that thing that you have that you can never get back once it's lost, you are making the world a better place. Do you understand why we have freedom? We have freedom because our founders believed that free people will choose to serve in ways that slaves won't. That free people will bring things to the surface. And it's worked. The American Republic has brought more wealth to impoverished people than any other system on earth. Communists talk all about freedom and equality. They don't bring it. We have our free market. Yeah, we still got rich and poor. But to be poor in America, in most cases, is to be middle class in some countries around the world. We let anyone participate. Did we start that way? No. But we fought our bloodiest war to set the slaves free. We made women have the ability to vote, for better or worse. We let most men vote, for better or worse. And trust me, there are goobers in both genders. The idea that America is a bad place because we once had slavery is nonsense. Because America has gone through a sense of self-purgation to try to make us better than we were. You know who else has done this in the world? No one. No one has done what we have done to try to improve the idea of freedom, to make it apply to as many people as possible. And we've sacrificed for it. So anyway, think about that. My hope for you is that you'll find something worth living for. Maybe even worth dying for. Worth killing for, that I leave to God and to you. But I hope you find something in your life worth serving. Not just your own pleasure. Because that ends up being empty. And if you doubt me, look at every child star that ever existed in Hollywood or in music and see how wonderfully healthy and normal and well-balanced their lives are. A few people come through that, but most don't. I'm sorry, to be Justin Bieber is not necessarily a good thing. It just isn't. I'm sure there are... Who's today's Justin Bieber?
Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber.
Is he still...
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word. That surprises me. He's
He's
a little old
He's having
to be the boy idol that he once was.
about it on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who would it
Yeah,
be?
JoJo seems
Who?
JoJo Siwa.
JoJo Siwa? Okay, I'll take your... I know nothing about this,
She
so
was
you're
like
teaching
on
me.
a ton of Nickelodeon live action stuff and
Okay.
Dance Moms at one point.
So JoJo Siwa.
Wah.
Wow.
Wah.
And is it a he or a she or something in between? Okay. Okay, good. If I'm feeling brave, I may look it up. But if you hear me screaming, you'll know why. Okay. What? No. The earth will swallow me up. Okay. What makes the High Middle Ages so high and mighty after all? Well, castles are part of it, cathedrals are part of it, but cities are at the heart of it. Remember, a culture doesn't become a civilization until it builds cities. In the Dark Ages, there were really no cities in Christendom. Rome wasn't a real city. Aix-la-Chapelle wasn't a real city. They were towns. If trade broke down, they'd survive. Most people would survive. That's the definition of a city, remember. If trade breaks down, most people will die. If you're in a society that's that crowded, you're in a city. In the High Middle Ages, Paris becomes a city. London becomes a city. Frankfurt becomes a city. Even Rome approaches citydom again. So cities are back. And there are fewer and fewer barbarians knocking the anthill over again and again and again. So people learn how to build 3-story buildings, 4-story buildings, 5-story buildings. They learn how to take wooden castles and convert them to stone castles. They learn how to build cathedrals, which is very special. It's really cities. And those other things are signs that cities are back. So the High Middle Ages is when Christian society, Christendom, builds its first cities again. Now, our case study is going to be Norman, England. A, because I know more about it, but B, because the United States comes from England culturally. This is our parent. So, Norman, England. It starts in 1066, October of, when William the Conqueror wins the Battle of Hastings. And what characterizes Norman, England more than anything else is that on the top of the order, you've got the Normans. And imagine the Normans as a big flip. And then beneath the Normans, sort of like a big splat, like Bambi after Bambi meets Godzilla.
Guardzilla.
Guardzilla. You got the Saxons. And the Saxons are oppressed because the Normans want to show them who's boss. Look, there are times when you might have to be cruel to the people under you in order to accomplish a mission, or to keep everyone alive, or most people alive. But the Normans don't step on the Saxons just for the fun of it. The Normans are stepping on the Saxons so that the Saxons don't have any opportunity to rebel. The Normans are not trying to win hearts and minds. They are forcing the Saxons and forcing the Saxons and forcing the Saxons. They're pressurizing them and pressurizing them because they're in charge. And if they're like the Spartans in this sense. The Spartans were never nice to their slaves. Their helots were always treated badly because the Spartans didn't want to give the helots a chance to rebel. The Normans didn't want the Saxons to have a chance to rebel. So, one of the first things that William does is he divides England up among his buddy boys, his knights. The Norman knights are given all of England. In other words, the property rights of Englishmen and of English lords are ignored. But my family's ruled this valley for... terrible accent, I'm sorry. But my family has ruled this valley for generations. Shut up, Saxon. Get in the fields and dig your turnips. No! The Saxons who are allowed to keep their titles are now under Norman authority. The Saxons who may have ruled or owned their land are now under a Norman landlord, a Norman baron, a Norman knight, a Norman lord. And the Normans treat all Saxons as enemies, the rich and the poor. Sometimes they'll make a Saxon a friend of theirs to try to have like an anti-Saxon Saxon, like a Saxon who will turn information on the other Saxons, a Saxon that will help them rule the other Saxons. And oddly enough, some Saxons go along with it. This happens whenever there's a conquest. There are some people who join the conquerors, even though you'd think they'd want to fight the conquerors. No. They join, they assume the conquerors are going to be in charge forever. This is what Rome inspired people to do. Rome offered people who joined the conquerors citizenship. Bless you. Which was a good system. There are tissues over there if you need. So, England is divided up into a bunch of Norman fiefs. Now, the word fief is basically a piece of territory given to someone. So, F-I-E-F. I think it's fief. I don't think it's F-E-I-F. I think it's F-I-E-F. Anyway, it's a fief. It's pronounced fief. So England is now, all of it, owned by and under the authority of Normans in every town, in every village, in every piece of wilderness. The Normans own fiefs. Okay. These Normans start out by building motte and bailey castles. They find the best location, a place that has a nice natural water spring, a place that's on high ground, a place that's easily defensible, and they build the best motte and bailey castle they can. Or they build their motte and bailey castle near such a spot. Over the next 200 years, the motte and bailey castle has a stone castle built next to it. And eventually the motte and bailey castle is left to rot, or it's burned down, or it's torn apart. And what's left is this beautiful stone Norman castle. The point of a castle is to be the Lord's residence and a fortress from which the Lord can control his area. So it's the Lord's residence, and it also is a fortress from which they can control this area. If anyone attacks the Lord or the people can retreat into the castle. The Lord might even allow Saxons inside the castle if the Saxons behave. So castles are going to allow this upper class not just to rule around London, but to rule over England all over the place. Each of the Norman knights swears something called fealty to the king. Fealty is loyalty that holds society together. Fealty, F-E-A-L-T-Y, is the loyalty that holds society together. Fealty is the loyalty that holds society together. As such, when the king wants to make a lord, the potential lord goes through confession, to apologize to God for all the sins that they did, and through a religious ritual that is then concluded by the king asking for a sword. He gets the sword. Sometimes the king uses his own sword. Sometimes he uses the sword of the potential lord. And the potential lord kneels before him. And the king, in effect, takes his sword and taps both shoulders. By God, St. Michael, and St. George, I dub thee knight, or I dub thee baron, or whatever. And then, when the guy gets up, if it's the potential noble sword, the king hands him the sword, and the guy takes it. The Lord swears to serve God by serving the king. The king asks, the Lord does. The king tells, the Lord complies. No argument. God tells the king what to do. The king tells the Lord what to do. The Lord tells the knight what to do. The knight tells the Saxons what to do. Loyalty to God is loyalty to the state. Far from there being a separation of church and state, all Christian kings are holy offices. They hold holy offices. A king has to go through a ritual of coronation, and that ritual of coronation is going to make the king say a sacred oath that he will rule this land and these people by God, in God's name, for the greater glory of who? Of God. So the king serves God with total loyalty. The Lord serves the king with total loyalty, because by serving the king, he serves God. The knight serves the Lord with total loyalty, because by serving the Lord, he serves the king, who serves the God with total loyalty. You get it? This is called fealty, swearing fealty. These knights also take on a code of conduct called chivalry. Chivalry is not when you have a sharp object in prison and you rule by that. That's called a shiv, but it's spelled differently. It's a little prison joke you might not get. You get a sharp object in prison, you call it a shiv. It's spelled S-H-I-V, and basically you can do nasty things with it. Chivalry, in this case, is C-H-I-V-A-L-R-Y. Chivalry is the code of a knight. Now, in the West, knights are expected to be honest. Why would a knight lie? A knight is supposed to tell the truth no matter what. Honey, does this skirt make my butt look big? Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. But you say, no, of course not. Unless it does, in which case I, as a husband, have learned over the years to be honest and say, as nice as the dress may look, from certain angles, it's not the most flattering. Maybe you want to put something else on. Now, that's the way I say it. And I've earned enough trust from my wife for her not to go nuts on me. Some women and some wives, and probably some men these days, who know, are not so patient. Honey, does this tie look good? No, it looks like you were vomited on by a wolverine. Probably are nicer ways of saying that. In any event, I like this tie. I don't care if it looks like a wolverine vomited on it. Wolverine did a good job with the boat.
Is that what your wife said this morning?
No, it isn't. No. But she would say things like that if she thought. No, actually, she wouldn't. She's very nice to me. I'm very nice to her. That's why we're still together after all these years. The point is, you're supposed to be true. A knight is not supposed to lie. A knight is not supposed to deceive. A knight is not supposed to play games with words. A knight is supposed to be as honest as the day is long. Not just that. Knights are supposed to be gentlemen to ladies. Now, does this mean that a knight riding his horse is going to be nice to a peasant girl or woman? No. She's a peasant. She may be female, but the knight is not going to treat her like a lady. However, Norman upper-class women, and to a much less degree, Saxon aristocrats that cooperate with the Normans, are going to be treated special. You don't ever speak badly around a lady. You don't use bad language around a lady. When a lady walks into the room, you stand up to show respect, not just for that lady, but for the institution of ladyhood. A lady is the opposite, is the same thing as a gentleman. A person of refinement, of culture, of authority, of being somebody worthy of being treated with respect. A lady's about to go through the door, you hold the door open for her. You're walking on the street with a lady, the wall is here, the lady is here, you are here. Why? Because when people throw their garbage out on the street, it'll hit you, not her. Why? Because if threats come, it'll come from this direction. You get to fight for your lady. That's a privilege. It is a privilege to fight for your lady. If you're going to be jousting and a lady chooses to give you her kerchief to put on your lance, she is pledging to you her support, and it's an honor. You treat a lady like a lady. This comes from chivalry. Knights are supposed to be honest. They're supposed to be loyal and true. They're supposed to be gentlemen to ladies. Knights are also supposed to be refined, to learn something about reading or writing or poetry or one of the arts. Music is something that knights might make at some point. So a knight in the chivalry system isn't just a warlord that's going to keep the Saxons down. A knight is the kind of man every man should want to be. The kind of man every lady should want to be with. A gentleman, a fighter, yes, but also a man of art and culture, a man who treats ladies right, who protects women and children. If there's a fire, women and children first, you get the women and children out, then you get yourself out. You talk about being a servant, being a means to a greater end. A knight is supposed to be all that. A man whose life is lived in service to God by serving his Lord with chivalry and fealty. The last thing I'll say today is about the Domesday Book. This is sometimes translated as the Doomsday Book, and it might as well have been. This is William the Conqueror being a good administrator. He sends his agents all across the land to count how many chickens people have on a particular day. How many sheep, how many goats, how many pigs, how many cows, how many barns, how many acres planted with wheat or barley, how many acres planted with vegetables. How many eggs do these chickens produce? How much woodland is owned? Every bit of property in England is counted. It takes years to put together, and all of the information is put into Domesday, the Domesday Book. And this book is going to be the basis of taxation for the next couple hundred years, and it's updated. It's not just, this is the way it was in 1068 or 1070. It's going to be updated every so often. So the king knows how many taxes to ask of people. What if there's a fire? What if there's a disease? Well, you can make an appeal to the king for an exception. You're still going to have to pay taxes, but maybe not as much. But you have to account for it. Because all of the property has been registered and counted, you are accountable for paying taxes on it. Nobody's ever done this before, in the Middle Ages anyway. Not in Europe. But the king, William the Conqueror, the Norman King of England, by setting up the Domesday Book, is actually going to be able to collect many more taxes than anyone had up till this point. And again, England's a rich country. Agriculturally, its people are skilled, hardworking. So, Domesday is the key. Any questions, comments, or thoughts? Then I thank you, and I wish you a... Yes?
Not really about this.
Uh-huh.
Yesterday, I was wondering about the, Muslim culture. Do women have an afterlife? Or they just...
I believe all believers have an afterlife,
is it...
but it's segregated.
Okay, so, there's, the paradise for the...
Young men, and there's the paradise for the women, the mothers, the daughters. There's the paradise for little children who die in their youth. Jesus talks about this too. He says, "In my Father's mansion there are many rooms." And the idea is that paradise is going to look like different things to different people. Don't expect everyone to live in the clouds with the cherubs and the harps and all that. For me, I think paradise would be being with my loved ones again, all at the same time, in the presence of God. So yeah, there's a place for women. Women are definitely beloved of Allah. They have a special role. But particularly Arab Islamic culture, always segregates. Men and women do spend time together behind closed doors, but that's private. And it's not just sex. It's the relationship, the happy, conversations between husbands and wives, all that stuff. Obviously, sisters and brothers spend a lot of time with one another. Mothers and sons, fathers and daughters, all that. That's true. But chances are, since women pray together separately in mosques from men, probably paradise will at least be partially sacred. Certainly, you're not going to have women go to the place where the young men are going. That's it. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for asking. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your attention. Have a good day.